It was a cold November morning in the small town of Asheville, North Carolina, when Emily Carter, a 17-year-old girl with torn sneakers and a heart far bigger than her circumstances, found something that would change her life forever. She was walking to school, clutching her worn-out backpack and the lunch her mother had packed. Half, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. The wind bit through her thin jacket, and she could already feel the weight of another hard day. But as she passed the alley behind the old grocery store, a faint, broken whimper stopped her in her tracks. She turned and saw a small, trembling dog lying beside a trash bin. Its fur was matted with mud and blood, one leg twisted awkwardly, eyes filled with fear and pain. The sight pierced her heart. Emily knelt down, whispering softly, "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The dog flinched but didn't move. It was too weak even to bark. That moment, one human heart connecting with one helpless soul would set in motion a story no one in that little town would ever forget. If you believe kindness and second chances can still change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us spread more real stories that touch hearts. Emily looked around. The street was empty. She had exactly $5 in her pocket, money she'd been saving to buy a new notebook for school. But she didn't hesitate. She gently wrapped the trembling dog in her scarf and carried it home, ignoring the stares from people along the way. The animal was filthy, bones poking through its thin skin, but to Emily, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever held. She named him Lucky, though at that moment, neither of them seemed lucky at all. At home, Emily's mother, Karen, gasped when she saw the dog. Their tiny apartment barely had space for the two of them. Karen worked double shifts at a diner, and Emily sometimes helped neighbors clean porches to pay for her school supplies. They could barely afford groceries, let alone vet bills. But when Emily begged, "Mom, please, he won't survive out there," her mother just sighed and nodded. "All right," she whispered. "We'll figure something out." That night, Emily cleaned Lucky's wounds with warm water and the last of their antiseptic cream. She fed him pieces of her dinner, ignoring the hunger gnawing in her stomach. When he finally looked up at her and wagged his tail, just once, her eyes filled with tears. For the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe she could save something, even if she couldn't fix her own life. The next few weeks were a blur of struggle and small miracles. Lucky began to heal. He started following Emily everywhere, down the cracked sidewalks to school, to the library where she studied, and even to the diner where her mom worked. The customers adored him, and a few began leaving little treats or tips for the brave girl and her dog. Slowly, Lucky became a part of the town's heart, and people started noticing Emily's quiet kindness. But fate has a way of testing those who give the most. One rainy evening, Emily returned home to find her mother sitting at the table with an eviction notice in her trembling hands. The landlord had raised the rent again, and they had 2 weeks to leave. Emily felt her chest tighten. "We can't lose our home, Mom," she whispered, hugging her mother tightly as Lucky whimpered at their feet. That night, Emily sat awake, staring at Lucky sleeping beside her, his head resting on her arm. She whispered, "I don't know what we're going to do, boy, but I promise I'll never give up on you." She didn't know that soon. That promise would change everything, not just for her, but for an entire town. The next morning, Emily took Lucky to the park to clear her mind. The rain had stopped, and the air was cold but bright. As she sat on a bench, she saw a man in a suit pacing nearby, clearly distressed. He looked lost, searching for something, or someone. Suddenly, Lucky's ears perked up, and before Emily could stop him, he darted across the park, barking wildly. The man turned, his eyes widening. Lucky leapt toward him and began wagging his tail frantically. Emily ran after him, calling out apologies, until she noticed the man's expression change from confusion to astonishment. The man dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes. "Buddy," he whispered. Lucky froze, then whimpered and jumped into his arms. Emily watched, stunned, as the man clung to the dog like a father reunited with a lost child. It turned out that Lucky, whose real name was Buddy, had gone missing over 2 months ago after a car accident on the highway. The man, James Walker, was a local businessman who had searched for his dog everywhere. He'd even put up reward posters, but the storm had washed most of them away. Emily's heart sank. She loved Lucky more than anything, but she couldn't deny what she was seeing. "He's your dog?" she asked quietly. James nodded, tears streaming down his face. Yes, he's my family. He looked at Emily, noticing her threadbare clothes and weary eyes. You saved him, didn't you? Emily nodded, barely able to speak. He was hurt. I just couldn't leave him. James gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You have no idea what this means to me. He took a deep breath and said, Please come with me. Let me at least do something for you. At first, Emily refused. She wasn't looking for a reward. She had just done what felt right. But James insisted, and eventually she agreed to follow him home. When they arrived at his house, a large white home with a wide porch and a garden, Emily's eyes widened. It was the kind of place she'd only seen in movies. Inside, James's wife, Linda, burst into tears when she saw Buddy. The family surrounded the dog, laughing and crying, thanking Emily over and over. James asked her to sit down. He listened to her story, how she and her mother struggled to make ends meet, how they were about to lose their home. The more he heard, the quieter he became. When she finished, he said softly, Emily, I can never repay what you did, but please let me try. That evening, James drove Emily home to meet her mother. He spoke gently to Karen, offering to pay their rent for the year and to help Emily with her education. Karen was speechless. She had never expected kindness from a stranger, but James only smiled. You raised a daughter with a heart of gold, he said, and that's something this world needs more of. Over the next few months, everything began to change. James and Linda visited often, bringing groceries and helping Emily enroll in a scholarship program. Emily worked hard studying late into the night with Lucky, now Buddy again, often coming over to visit her. The Walkers insisted she could come see him any time, and they even invited her to spend weekends at their home. Slowly, Emily's world began to brighten. Then came the day of her high school graduation. As Emily walked across the stage in her simple gown, she looked out into the crowd and saw her mother crying, James and Linda clapping proudly, and Buddy wagging his tail at her feet. The entire town knew her story by then. The poor girl who had saved a dog and, in doing so, changed her own destiny. When Emily took the microphone to give her short speech as class valedictorian, her voice trembled, but her words were clear. Sometimes, she said, you don't have to have much to make a difference. You just have to care. When I found Buddy, I thought I was saving him, but really he saved me. He reminded me that kindness still matters, even when the world feels cold. So never stop being kind. You never know whose life you might change, maybe even your own. The crowd rose in applause. There were tears, cheers, and smiles everywhere. And as Emily looked up at the sky, she whispered a quiet thank you to life, to hope, and to a little dog who had brought light into her darkest days. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more true and inspiring stories like this one to life. And before you go, comment below. Kindness still matters, because it truly does.